there, and thank you so much for joining me today. So are you planning on putting an enterprise architecture practice in place? Well, I've created a series of 4 courses to help you do that. So why does your organization need an enterprise architecture practice? This course is going to give you the tools to sell the value of having this EA practice. There's no prerequisites, and what you're going to learn is how to sell the value of an EA practice to your executives and how to establish the vision for your organization. What I want to help you do is to gather the information and the support of your senior executive team in order to build a business case for an EA practice. The purpose of this course is to provide you with the tools and techniques to do just that. I'm going to start by showing you how I introduce the concept of EA to an organization. We really want to excite the organization on the idea and use this excitement to gather the information that we need to inform our business case. The goal is not to have your executives asking, do we really need an EA practice? But instead asking, what is the appropriate EA practice for our organization? So whenever I'm about to embark on anything like standing up a practice or a department or even just a new process, I like to start with a 1-hour meeting with each of the key stakeholders. In this case, it's the senior executives. What I mean by senior executives is it's anyone and everyone reporting to the CEO or CEO equivalent. It's important to interview each one of them in isolation, and you must include business, technical, finance, HR, like all of them. This meeting is really, these meetings are twofold. One is to educate the individual on EA and get them excited about it. And the second is to gather enough information to inform your business case, because in order to gain the support of each one of these executives. So first off, you need to figure out what each of these stakeholders really needs help with. So is it cutting costs? Is it increasing revenue? Is it creating a new business strategy? Is it reducing total cost of ownership of technology? Is it aligning projects? Is it ensuring projects achieve their goals and objectives? Or are you in a situation like we are today with the coronavirus and you really need help reactive planning? So you're looking at how do you start to change the way your organization delivers its services given all this social distancing that's going on. So once you figure out what the stakeholder needs help with, then you need to book a 1-hour meeting telling them that you would like to explore a new practice to help them with whatever they need help with. Once you get this meeting booked, I just can't stress enough, you only get one chance. You really have to come prepared. So research your audience before this meeting. Come prepared with what works for them. Throughout this meeting, you have to keep them engaged. You must read their every movement, every expression. I always start with a bit of a chat to gauge their understanding and appetite to even really learn about this topic. So after about 5-10 minutes of this chat, I like to walk through a bit of a presentation, and this is really just to help me keep on track and ensure I get everything I need for my business case. So I always like to start with a bit of an explanation or a definition. And again, we want to keep this really as simple and as brief as possible. Feed them only as much as they're interested in. And don't ever make them feel stupid or overwhelmed because they're going to disengage. So you want something like, EA is really focused on putting structure around change in order to help you, then put a sentence in whatever they can relate to. And then let them know that the key to its success is to customize it so it works for their organization. Let them know that you really don't want to waste their time, so you only want to focus on things that might benefit them and their department. So one thing that I always run into is the first thing out of their mouths is EA doesn't work, enterprise architecture doesn't work. We've tried to stand it up before and it just doesn't take, and We can't document everything, and we can't stop our organization to get it documented. The way I like to respond to that is, first of all, the key to success is it really needs to be customized for your organization, as big or as small as your organization can handle. And the other thing is how it's strategically placed within your organization. You don't want to create new problems. You basically just want to solve and move it forward with what they're already doing, and it's got to be slow changes. That's probably the biggest thing. And the other thing is that whole ivory tower, and I try and keep them engaged, and we're going to get to some of those points later on of how we don't get caught up in that. So the presentation that I like to give them is really focused on these 5 areas. So tell them that you want to walk through 5 areas, and basically you're gathering their thoughts on how they see it working within their department, and you really want to ensure that that it's worth their value, and it supports their department and their needs. So the first area, this is the biggest one, enterprise architecture, process, and activities. So this is what the practice is about. Educate them, get them excited. Start with, EA is about structured change. EA helps an organization get from where they are today to their vision. They do this by creating a consolidated roadmap, which is really just a stepping stone path of activities that need to happen in order to realize the vision. Tell them that they're going to help create that vision. And the EA practice is then going to put the tools in place to ensure the organization realizes the vision. Again, I reassure them that the enterprise architect or the architects aren't the expert in their business. What they are the expert in is putting that structure around change, asking the right questions, connecting the dots, engaging subject matter experts across the organization in order to tease out the information needed to make this happen. So EA is a core planning resource, and the key to success is how this roadmap is used and evolved. So there's no point having an EA practice or a consolidated roadmap if you're not going to use them. So let's start telling them about all the different ways that they could use it. Relate it back to, again, what you set that meeting up for. Focus on the ones that help them and see where they get excited. And again, depending on who you're talking to, you're going to have to adjust their examples. So for example, using that roadmap. You can use that roadmap to really start to identify reusable components, to scope projects, to review projects for alignment. You can use that roadmap to assess changes against the roadmap quickly to understand what will be impacted, and if any projects are currently working on that. You can use the roadmap for yearly business planning sessions. So you could have a 10-year roadmap, but the first year is always a lot more detailed, and each year you move out, it gets more of a conceptual flavor to it. Because this is continually evolving as you move forward, you build out the more detail as you go forward. And again, it's really important to keep this roadmap current. So as things get finished, they come off the roadmap, and then you work a little more detail further along on. And then, like I said too, keeping this evolution of this roadmap going is what the EA team members need to be strategically positioned to do. So then let's talk about the team. So there's 5 disciplines to EA, namely your business, your information, your data, your application or systems, technology infrastructure, and security. So remember we said that EA is a core planning resource. Well, what makes it so powerful is it's made up of all these 5 disciplines. All of these disciplines are taken into consideration when planning and connecting the dots. The other cool thing about it is the team comes together to really create that vision for you, so that they're taking the fluffy conceptual strategies, and they're bringing it down to true components and things that have to happen on the floor, on the operations to make it come alive. So the team really understands what needs to be put in place for that vision. So in their back of the minds, they've always got that. And as they're engaging around the organization, they're always making those suggestions to ensure that the organization is always moving forward. The team also, because it crosses all these disciplines, really helps translate your business needs into your IT solutions. Quite often you would have your CTO delegating down on the technical side of these things that need to happen, researching, investigating, and then on the business side you've got things also going on where your business is researching and analyzing, and where a lot of the gaps happen and the problems happen is that translation across those two domains. Business people just speak a very different language than technical people. So as you're explaining the team, make sure you kind of get into these types of things, and then again bring forward examples that they could get excited about and help them. One of my clients got really excited about the fact that one person would own the change. It goes back to sort of that delegation and where things kind of fall through the cracks and off the gap. If there's one person, your enterprise architect, that's kind of owning this change and doing the research and connecting, they're leaning on their business SMEs and their data SMEs and their security SMEs to answer the questions and connect all the dots. You'll get that full picture. Another very interesting point is, a lot of organizations struggle with that balance between operations and transformation. So transformation doesn't have to be a big thing. It's sort of any kind of change that's going on. When operations has a fire, when something has to happen in operations, these other things get dropped because it is the same players that play in both space. By having your enterprise architecture team or this practice in place where you've got different people kind of owning that change, it would help the organization move forward. What tends to happen, and it's human nature, people will go back to what's comfortable for them. So if you start this practice up off the side of your desk and you don't have it fully planned out, it's quite easy just to go back into your normal routine. So by having a team, and again, we're not talking about the number of members in a team yet. Don't get them all excited that right away you're going to have 6 new people of the team. It's the thought process that it could be one person, an enterprise architect, but the main thing is it's always across these disciplines and connecting the dots. I do have a YouTube video out there, which I'll include in the package. You can see where I talk about the team. Likewise, what EA is, or that main process of the roadmap. There's one there for you to go over. So the next big area I like to talk about is governance. So again, it's not that there's an enterprise architect or a team that's just working out there on their own. It's very important that this whole practice is embedded within the full organization. So what that means is your EA practice is, they're engaging with your executive steering committee. This is where they're learning about the conceptual ideas. This is where they're learning about what's important with the organization. Likewise, what they're doing, the team is feeding up any sort of critical decisions or any decisions that need to be made. So you've got a conduit into there. Governance on all the projects. So this is where you're going to have regular check-ins with projects and reviews to ensure that the projects are aligning with the vision and that the vision still makes sense as your projects really start to discover some of the details. Your projects will continue as they do today. Your projects will get into the details of how things are done. The difference with your EA practice is to now start to feed into projects that architectural components and the vision. You've got the disciplines there to help you to share where we want to go and make sure that the projects are moving the organization forward towards the vision. Outsourcing. So what can happen here now is your organization, your enterprise architecture practice does have that big blueprint or that big plan of how everything is interconnected and related to each other. So now you've got something that you hold your outsourcing accountable to more than just service level agreements. You want your outsourcing on your systems or your processes or whatever you've outsourced to start moving along and moving with your vision as well. And you don't want them creating your vision. You do want them influencing because they know their stuff, but you don't want them creating the vision for you. You want to be ownership of it. The benefit of having an enterprise architecture practice, if you have any outsourcing, is now they've got a conduit into the organization to ask any questions related to information data, business, technical, infrastructure, security. It's not necessarily leaning all of it onto your project managers or your program managers or whatever level you have there. A lot of the decisions and some of the fine details can come through your architecture practice. Procurement is another area where you want your enterprise architecture practice integrating with or touching points with. This is where, again, it's more about ensuring that we're using and evolving that roadmap. So your EA is the one that can translate that roadmap and show the activities that need to happen to realize your vision. And as well as things happen down in procurement, you can update and evolve your roadmap so that those high-level dots are connected. RFPs. Again, for some of your bigger RFPs going out, by having touch points with your enterprise architecture practice, and again, using and evolving that roadmap, it can help dictate what goes into your RFPs, and again, whatever decisions are made during that process can be updated on your roadmap. Business planning. This is the big one where EA really should be engaging because it is a planning resource. Planning is all about using and evolving that roadmap. So if your organization takes enough time to create the vision and that consolidated roadmap, you really want to be using that throughout the organization. So whether it is a business unit planning session or it is an organizational yearly planning session, by engaging with the enterprise architect who has that roadmap, they can help interpret what that means and connect the dots with whatever planning's going on. And likewise, what is the details that are revealed within the planning session, you can now update and evolve your roadmap, because that roadmap, the power of it is it's got to be a living entity, right? It is continually evolving as new information comes forward. So each one of these planning sessions is, it's unveiling more details, and they need to be embedded within that roadmap. Okay, the next big area is business processes. So this point is probably the most critical and the one that's too often overlooked. So I can't stress enough, EA is not an IT thing. You've really got to drill this in to everybody within the organization. Nor is it about artifacts and just documenting everything. Organizations exist to do something. What they do is their core business. How they do it are your core processes. It is these processes that need to evolve and change over time. This is the whole key to enterprise architecture. This is the whole key to your consolidated roadmap. Your consolidated roadmap are really, all the pieces that and activities, components that need to happen to get these core processes from where they are today to where you want them to be. So if you're moving towards a more self-service environment, then your roadmap is going to be about all the activities of how do you change these processes that are currently being services delivered in-house to start to expose them out and chunk them down so it makes sense to your clients. Now, once you start to look at, identify how that's going to look, then you can start to overlay, well, how does the data information need to change? How does the solution, the technologies, the systems need to change in order to support that? How does security now need to change to support that? So again, the business processes are the ones that would be your key to drive everything. Everyone in your organization should understand what they are, because they're doing them, or they're supporting them, or they're enabling them. So your EA practice is gonna, one of the first things it does is it's gonna help identify each of these core business processes, and with them, it's gonna identify key performance indicators. Again, it's gonna be your senior execs that are gonna help you identify how they want to measure these processes. It's gonna be them to help identify what the critical success factors are for these core processes. Once these things you've got them all defined, this is gonna create that environment where change is gonna happen because these processes aren't measuring up to the performance indicators. So if our interview happens to be with a business person right now, you wanna highlight how the practice is gonna help them improve their processes. They're gonna ensure that the IT solutions meet their needs. If you're talking to a technical executive, then you might wanna highlight that the practice is gonna help them get to the bottom of the underlying issues and not have the business continually coming to them with a solution already in mind. If you're talking to finance, the practice is really going to hone in on what the core businesses are and ensure that the waste and inefficiencies are weeded out. So, the whole EA practice, the main objective is that consolidated roadmap, but that consolidated roadmap is there to protect your core processes. And again, the way I always start the EA practice is to focus first on those core business functions and processes, but a fully mature EA practice is going to have all processes, all the supporting and enabling processes as well, the corporate processes in there to a point where we're measuring it. But you've got to start small. So right now what we're going to do is focus on these core processes and make them as efficient as possible. So the last area is organizational commitment. So again, the practice is there to help the whole organization. It is not an IT thing. It ensures all dots are connected across projects and divisions. It's looking for patterns and ways to move an organization forward. Every change is an opportunity to move an organization further down that path. So tell them that you really want to understand how they see themselves and their department using an EA practice or benefiting from an EA practice. There's a YouTube out there that's going to help explain all this, but this one I really like to put last. So after I've kind of got them excited about what the EA activities really are and how they're going to engage in the organization, the team, so we're there to represent everybody across the organization. Then you get into the governance about, it's not the EA practice that making all the decisions, it's the EA practice engaging in those key parts, or strategic placements within an organization, and it's more about translating the roadmap and making sure it's evolving and updated. And then the last one was those key core processes. So that's what's going to drive the EA program or the practice, is revolving around what those critical business functions are and how do we perform them and bring all the organization departments together to support that. Now we want to see how much they really understood from all that and where they're excited and where they think it can benefit. I do a lot of just listening here to what they're saying, because this is the stuff that I either have to come back and re-clarify, make clearer because they didn't really understand it. And this is the points that I've really got to bring out in my business case to ensure that they get what they think they want. Again, you're going to help to connect the EA practice to their department and really emphasize the places that EA could help them. So for example, if you're talking to a business person, you're going to help them get to a metrics-based environment. You're going to ensure the technical solutions meet their needs. You're going to move their particular visions and objectives to reality and ensure the projects meet their critical success factors, goals, objectives. If you're talking to a finance person, you're really going to help ensure that money is spent on improving the core business processes. You're going to, really reduce their risk and liability, and you're going to look for ways of increasing revenue. If you're talking to an IT person, you're really going to help them understand true underlying business issues. You're going to try and break that cycle of the business coming to you with solutions. I need this set up because what you want to understand is what they're really trying to do, because your department understands the technology better, and you want to make sure that your technical roadmaps are moving forward as well, and you're not standing up old solutions or putting more volumes on solutions that you're planning on getting rid of. So basically, your first step, this first course, is really about engaging with your senior executives to see where you are. So after talking to each one of them, you should kind of now have an understanding of what each of them wants and needs, where an EA practice would need to engage and interact with their departments, where their areas of change are. Also, you can get into some of the discipline weaknesses and strengths. So you should get a good sense of, the types of business analysts and business architect mindsets that are out there. You should be able to get a good grasp of, the security space and how well informed they are. And the EA practice, if they don't have the SMEs that they need to engage with, then we're going to need to bring in stronger players in those fields to compensate for that. So I have an exercise for you that needs to be completed before you go on to the next course. So before starting it, there's 4 items that you're going to need to complete. So the next course is all about your maturity assessment. So what we want to do on the next course is really to understand where the organization is today. This course here really started to build our vision of the practice and how we think it's going to start to run, and the players it's going to need, and where we're going to be engaging, and where we're going to be starting. So the next course is going to walk through how I have in the past, how I have understood the EA maturity of the organization, the current state. Because in order to put an EA practice in place, what we want to do is understand the current, understand the vision, and then we got to understand the activities that need to happen in order for us to put a plan in place to go forward. We're really doing, architectural EA work on top of an EA program. Okay, so once you have finished all of your meetings, I want you to capture the goals and objectives of the EA practice. So what do you think each of the stakeholder wants and needs based on what you heard? So again, for each of your stakeholders, I want you to list out what you think they want, so what you heard, and then fill in the gaps of what you believe they need. Second exercise is I want you to start to think about engage the potential size of that EA practice. We need to understand how big our team needs to be at the start and then at full maturity. We want to ensure that we are supporting the senior executives what they said. If we don't make it big enough, it'll fail. But again, if we make it too big, it'll fail. And I'll get into all of those reasons later on in one of the later courses. So, it doesn't have to be perfect right yet, but basically start to understand the strategies and projects on the go. This is really gonna help understand how big the vision for the changes. So how big are our changes? Are we looking at a real transformation where there's gonna be a lot of steps to the future? They're trying to do some big things, a lot of appetite for change, because we need to start translating those strategies down into our roadmap, and then we have to be engaging with the projects to ensure that they are aligning. SMEs that would integrate with the practice. I touched on this a little bit on the previous slide, but now we're looking at who would the SMEs be that we would engage and rely on within the organization. Are there any gaps, weaknesses? Are they strong? Are there too many? Potential appetite for change. So we're trying to understand how stable their area is. Are they happy, or do they want to change everything? So jot down these types of things, and what we're doing is we're trying to gauge the potential size of the enterprise architecture practice. We want to know where we're going to be positioning ourselves, where we're going to be interacting to get our information, and where we're going to be sitting to try and translate the roadmap and help with planning. So number 3, this is where we're really trying to capture the whole organization's vision, their mission, their mandate, their statements. So for each of the stakeholders, I want to understand what they're accountable for, and what their risks and liabilities are. So we want to capture information that's really going to help this program succeed. I mean, we want to make sure that we are helping them achieve what they're accountable for, and we want to make sure we're there to reduce these risks and liabilities. So if you recall from some of my other talks, the job of the enterprise architect is to work with the senior executives to move the organization forward while reducing risks and liabilities. So this is a huge key, and the tool we use is that consolidated roadmap. So if each of these execs has a number of strategies they're trying to move forward, this is a lot of work to get a hold of. Not only get a hold of, but try and align and help with. So you can't have 10 strategies. It's a wrong statement. You can have 10 strategies, but the consolidated roadmap has to consolidate all of them, because you have to be able to find the priority on these. They can't all go forward at once, or you're just fighting. And again, these are the meetings that you bring forward to senior execs to put some priority on things, and that's why you have all your key stakeholders at the table, so that we can table each one of theirs and start to talk about dependencies and foundational pieces and links. This enterprise architecture practice cannot be perceived as a burden. It really has to be a huge help. So we're going to help, coordinate some of these. Again, we're putting structure around change. So that means identifying what the change is, putting an order to when change happens, ensuring change is successful. If the organization is stabilizing after a big transformation, then we want to help them stabilize, not transform. It's an important distinction. So you need to define and recommend a customized EA practice that will work for them and bring value. So listen to what each is trying to do, the issues they're trying to resolve, how they're trying to evolve, what business problems they're trying to solve. So number 4 is identify strategic positioning. So we want to understand where this program needs to interact with to understand what the change is and how change is happening. We want to understand what the current committees and boards are, like where do they exist and who's on them and how would we interact with them, which ones we would need to engage with. We will have to start with just a point of contact, but the ultimate goal would be a representative at each one of these. We're trying to connect the dots and pass information around. So the next step, so this course really helped us identify the vision of the EA practice. It's the future state. The next step is to identify the current state. So your next course, once you finish those homework assignments, because you're going to be building on them to the ultimate, that's what's going to get us to the ultimate roadmap. So once you finish your exercises, the next course is how to assess your organization's EA maturity.